Hello, CSL. We're getting through the first round of the playoffs. We're seeing some upsets, even more upsets possibly in the East coming over the next couple of days this weekend. But we're not here today to talk about the playoffs. We did that earlier on in the week. We are back today to talk about the season awards, end of season awards for the CSL. And of course, I'm joined here by not just by myself, but with a guest. And welcome back, Gary, back to the show. Gary, you've just been knocked out by. You may have to try to think of who you got knocked out by now. Who did you get knocked out by? You got
I
knocked out
got
by the
knocked out
Heat.
by the freaking Miami
Yeah.
Heat. Yep.
And so, how are you feeling? First of all, are you downbeat? Are you accepting the fact that the Heat are probably that little bit ahead of you now, or do you feel you could put up more of a fight?
I feel like it's just it was a bad matchup the way that their team was set up. It just Ben Simmons and like guys like PJ Dozier and all those guys, Ding Ying Huan, whatever his name is, they can all move literally like 4 to 5 positions. So when it comes to game planning, it's almost impossible to play chess with him because he can hide guys a spot that I just cannot cover at all. Like Ben Simmons is driving at will on my big man like Tristan Thompson and Walter Tavares. And then when I put a small guy there to trying to stop the drive, it just got other guys that dominate, like Josh Smith dominates the paint. So just a tough matchup. It is what it is. At least make the playoffs, but we're definitely going to try to get better for this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, tough one for the first round for you guys. I think the Heat will be one of the teams to go quite far this year, as we kind of discussed earlier in the week. They have some crazy matchups and some crazy lineups that they can certainly play against teams, and certainly you experienced it firsthand to begin with.
Yeah.
So on to the off season and thinking about the Wizards going forward. But before we talk about that, I'm sure over the coming weeks and months as the playoffs start to die down and teams start to go crazy over the draft as they usually do. We're here today to talk about the end of season awards, and with someone to get you on really, Gary, was you were one of the first to put your end of season awards survey in. So you must have a fairly good idea of the lay of the land across the CSL, and it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on, who you possibly voted for, who you considered. Um, just share with the audience and share with other general managers there, who may not have put their formal survey in yet and are still mulling over the options. So we'll dive in, shall we, and talk about the obvious one, the first award that comes up for everyone, and that is the MVP, the most valuable player award. Who have you got? Who did you have him for the running for that? Was there a clear standout, or was there a couple of guys you considered for your selection?
Right now, the clear standout for me is Paul George. I feel like he's the most complete superstar in the league right now, and I think his resume shows it. He can pretty much he's doing on both ends of the court for the Dallas Mavericks, and I believe the Mavericks won 57 games this year. They won a division, one of the top seats in the Western Conference, and I just think that he's the clear winner because if you look at the whole landscape of the league right now, it seems like a lot of teams are running more of a team approach, like playing team ball. And PG-13 is one of the few guys that actually a true alpha dominant star on a contending team. So I'm giving him the MVP award. So
Yeah, and I mean, I have to agree with you. He is the one that stands out. He was the first name that I thought of when thinking about this award, and it's no surprise that Dallas has someone on the MVP awards list. Like you kind of hinted at, the style that they play, they are a roster. It's always been focused on a couple of stars, or one star and then two sort of supporting all-star players. But obviously Dallas went through that transition sort of period, if you can call it that, at the beginning of the season, with the likes of Steph Curry moving on, and Paul George has certainly taken up the mantle there. Was there anyone else who you considered? I mean, I think we both kind of agree that Paul George is his award to lose this year, but was there any other standout candidates that you had to go back and have another look at?
yeah, Kristaps Porzingis was very impressive this year for Utah. He made huge leaps and bounds as the alpha dog for the Utah this year. He's averaging, I think, like 22 points a game, 9 rebounds, almost a steal and a half per game, and like 2 blocks per game. He's pretty much just transcended his game into a complete big man. I mean, you all know that Utah Jazz has a pretty good year this year, even though they technically was retooled and not as starting five dominant as they were last year. But Porzingis seems to be thriving as the alpha dog there, and I think he deserves some shout out from the voters.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. I mean, you could probably have asked the entire league whether they felt Porzingis would ever step into that franchise player, that MVP type player that we know he has the potential for. And I'd imagine 80% of the league, probably Kevin and Brett, plus a couple of others I can think of off the top of my head, would have said, yeah, oh yeah, he's definitely going to be that sort of player. Whether some of them would have actually, you know, deep down thought of that is another question. But certainly, if you asked them, they would have. And he has delivered for the Jazz this year, hasn't he? I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about him with some other awards as we get through this video cast today. But he certainly has been the driving force for the Jazz this year, hasn't he? I mean,
Yep.
the points, the rebounds, the general contribution to winning from him has been exceptional.
Yep. And he's efficient. He's very efficient as well too. So just a good all around big man that we have not seen in years. So
No, and it's very rare you kind of see that in this version of DDS as well, really, in terms of you see a lot of big men who put up numbers and don't necessarily translate into wins. I think
yep.
for me in CSL, I can only think of Anthony Davis, and as someone who has done it purely on his own, really. Can you think of anyone else who, in the CSL who may have been that dominant or is that dominant? I mean, I can't think of anyone else.
I think there's one guy, Carl Anthony Towns could become that guy. He's shown some pretty good signs of that this year. And I think he's gonna hit even more improvement next year, kind of like Porzingis did in that third or fourth year boost to get. I mean, look at his numbers; they're getting pretty close, and we know
Yeah.
Houston's plays a lot more team ball as well. So I think that next year Carr is probably going to focus even more on the offense, on Cat's hands, and I think he could have a breakout season like Porzingis did.
Yeah. I just it's a good option actually. I hadn't considered Carl Anthony Townsend.
Yeah, that young team 50 wins is
Yeah,
pretty impressive. Nobody
yeah.
expected that this year. I can tell you that.
I mean, I don't think he's quite there in terms of MVP, but I certainly think if he's on the same trajectory as Kristaps Porzingis, then we could certainly have him in the MVP discussion next year. But a little bit too soon for him. And I've got another guy that I want to throw at you, who I was
Okay.
thinking of, and mainly because this team has been status quo for such a long period of time, and um, he's still churning out ridiculous numbers and helping them win, and that is Kyrie Irving. I mean, he hasn't dropped off at all from last year, and I mean the shooting's slightly down, but for a team that won 50 games again, probably I reckon I mean I don't definitely know this, but if you subtract his numbers and percentages before Ricky Rubio arrived this year, to when he did, I think the latter part of the season, his numbers would probably be slightly higher and slightly better. And if he'd have had that throughout the entire season, he may have been slightly closer to Paul George this year. I don't know whether he was someone maybe who you considered as well.
Oh yeah, he's definitely one of the persons I consider because if you look at the Cavs season in general, they suffer a lot of injuries. I know Blake Griffin was out for a while, Jimmy Butler was out for a while, and they just have a bunch of nagging injuries. Seems like throughout the year, and Kyrie's been the steady of rock that's been keeping the ship tight, and they've been playing better in the second half of the season once everyone gets healthy to help Kyrie out. And I personally face Kyrie 4 times a year, and he kills me every year. I was trying to focus on him, and then he still goes off. So I got to give him some props. This guy just a machine. When the team needs him to come up the most, he's gonna step up to the plate. Even though his efficiency could be a little bit wild at times, but this guy just I don't know. He just knows how to win. The Cavs wins with him. He wins games, and he takes over when you need him to. So that to me is definitely an MVP candidate.
Yeah, and I think when you consider an MVP candidate, it's always got to be someone in my head who can dominate on both sides of the ball. And I know,
Correct.
Paul George, Kristaps can do that at will. And I was actually really surprised by Kyrie when I had a look at some of his numbers in terms of his defensive side, because if you just look at his ratings, you don't necessarily see that. And for me, I've got it up here, but 2.3 turnovers forced, and a fairly solid stop percentage of about 83%, and points
Yep.
that shot faced of zero point 0.9. I mean, that's better than I thought it would be for him, and that kind of bumped him up against some of the other point guards who may have been in around sort of nearer in terms of his offensive output as well.
Exactly. Especially this league is so many good offensive point guards slash combo guards that he faces. That's really impressive. Like he's actually doing it in both ends of the court. And one more thing I'd like to add to this is that when Blake Griffin was out, the Cavs are still winning games. I think because Kyrie is actually carrying the team, so that just kind of gives him some credibility as a guy, as the most valuable player as we speak.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. When you have someone like that who can carry the team, that only helps propel them into award considerations for the MVP. I mean, that's exactly what the award's for. It's for guys who can take teams on their back, regardless of the other issues of it, and still win games. And we've seen that with Kyrie this year as well.
Correct.
Another guy who we've seen take their team on their back and really deliver this year. And again, probably a team that we are going to talk about quite a lot on this video cast, I imagine, is the New Orleans Pelicans, and
Yep.
probably the league's best player at the moment, Anthony Davis. I mean, what more can we say about him, Gary, apart from the fact that he wins games?
I just feel like Anthony Davis every year is going to be an MVP consideration. Like you look at the Pelicans, they went through a lot of changes, GM changes, roster changes, but they always still manage to be in the playoff race, even though the roster does not look talented at all because of Anthony Davis. I mean, I think we are starting to at this point we're just kind of getting bored maybe and getting taking him for granted. But I mean, you look at his stats. Like every year, this guy just puts up numbers on both ends of the court, and he's literally. I bet you his back hurts from backpacking that team all the time.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I think it kind of alludes to the fact, possibly not that we're bored of him, but just he's never really had that second type player, that sort of supporting player that some of the guys on this list have had or have got. And that supporting player probably contributes to 5 to 6 wins, which would then take the Pelicans into a 50-win team. And
Yep.
probably at that point, they'll get a bit more spotlight and he would get a bit more consideration. And it's a shame because his numbers have just been amazing for years now,
Yep.
regardless of how poor the Pelicans have been historically. So
I mean, even when they won the championship that one year with Jace as the GM, I think their second player was Bryce Cotton. I mean,
mhm.
don't get me wrong, Bryce Cotton's a great floor general, but he's not really a number two guy on offense. So,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
speaks volume of how valuable Anthony Davis is in this league.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, I guess we kind of agreed on this MVP award that it's kind of Paul George's to lose. With, I mean, for me personally, if I had to pick between the other three as the second and third place, I'd probably go with um, Kristaps Porzingis and then probably Anthony Davis. I'd probably have to get big man. I mean, where do
Yeah.
you sit with that?
Um, PG-13 clear winner for me. He checks all the boxes of MVP this year. The second one that's a little tougher. I'm going to give it to Kristaps Porzingis as well because that he just made huge leaps and bounds from his last year, and he's proven to the league that he can be the alpha dog of a contending team. And third place, like you said, I agree with Anthony Davis too. This guy just carrying the Hornets. I mean the Pelicans as usual. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to the next award on the list, which is the defensive player of the year. I mean, for me, it's a similar story to the MVP. There's one clear player who's miles ahead of everyone else, and then there's probably about three guys I could talk about in a similar fashion, really. Is that kind of how you feel with this award this year?
Yeah, I mean, last couple. I remember like last year, people were saying that there's actually Kemba Walker was actually should be the well-deserved winner instead of Okara White. But this year, it seems like Doug's actually giving Okara White the proper minutes to generate his full impact, and it shows it. This guy's like averaging like 2 blocks and 2 steals per game. He's just locking people down. He can play 3 positions. I mean, that's defensive player of the year right there. I mean, he doesn't foul out. He's a disciplined defender. I mean, he does it all on the defensive end of the ball, and he rebounds too. So
Yeah, I mean, just to throw some metrics at you, I mean, looking at Akara White, his stop percentage is 97.5%. His turnovers forced is 3.3. Points allowed shot faced is 0.8. I mean,
Jesus,
that's there is no one in this league who's anywhere near close to metrics like that.
yeah,
Uh,
he does it all.
yeah, I mean the only one who could ever possibly get close to him based on current teams is Justice Winslow. I mean, but
Yep.
the unfortunate thing is obviously he got injured, and just going to throw his metrics at you just so you can see the comparison. I mean, he only played, I think it was 4 games before he got injured, or 5 games before he got injured, and his
Yep.
metrics for that was 95% stop, 4 turnovers forced, and then a points allowed shot face of 0.8. So I mean, he is literally a spitting image of
Clone.
Akara White. So obviously
Yep.
Akara White can actually shoot the ball, and Justice Winslow probably can't at the moment. Needs a bit of work, but
Yeah.
it's been unfortunate really, because I think he would have been the guy who would have been neck and neck, and we probably would have had a really interesting discussion about who really deserves it. Is it the player who is on a team that wins more, or on a team that's fighting probably, for that borderline playoff spot? But it wasn't to be this year.
Nope. I mean, honestly, if the Pacers actually stuck with Winslow and didn't make all those crazy moves, they would easily make the playoffs, and we can definitely argue Winslow against Okaro.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, none of that happened. So.
No, and then I mean, looking at the rest of the pack, really, I mean, if we think that Akara White is on the podium for this award and should already be given the award, to be honest with you, we don't need to vote on it. Um, who else kind of stands out for you defensively?
Jordan Adams from Memphis. Kid's actually doing a really good job. I actually almost forgot about him because nobody really talks about Memphis, but that's the team of defense right there, and they're one of the top defensive team for a reason. He forces lots of turnovers. He's a good shot blocker for such a short guard too, and he can rebound. And this guy just seems like he does it all. And people usually flies under the radar because I think he plays for Memphis. So
Yeah, I mean, that's actually quite a good shout, really, for him. I mean, his stop percentage is 95%, 97%, sorry, 3.3 turnovers forced and 0.9. So he's actually closer to Akara White than you may think of in terms of the defensive side of the ball.
yep.
Um,
The only thing I got is to give him the slight disadvantage is that Phoenix wins games and Memphis kind of
yeah,
collapsed in the second
yeah,
half. So
yeah. It's unfortunate, really. I mean, Jordan Adams has Jordan Adams has played kind of enough minutes to argue that those are his defensive metrics and probably will be going forward. But yeah, when it comes down to it, I guess you've got Okara White, who is a guy who can play multiple positions, is very very solid on the defensive end, and he helps teams win games. And I mean, it's difficult, isn't it, to tell with some of these guys whether they actually do contribute or whether they have negative effects that you don't necessarily see. But with
yep,
Memphis struggling, I mean, kind of puts him probably slightly below that in terms of the second and third position, really. Uh,
correct.
so another guy that I had in terms of floating around is Kemba Walker.
As always.
As always, I mean, you can't talk about defensive player of the year without talking about Kemba Walker, can you? I mean, again, he's one for me. I don't know about you, Gary, but he's one for me that I'm almost bored of putting his name down for defensive player of the year now, because I know Akara White's going to win it, and I literally past couple of seasons, I've put Kemba Walker down for MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, and it feels like it's just I might as well just write their names in straight away. I mean, his metrics are good: 98% stop, 3.7 turnovers forced, and then 0.9 points allowed shot face. So he's very, very effective on the defensive end. But for me, I like the fact that Okaro White can play more positions than Kemba Walker.
Yep.
Which kind of means that again he's below in terms of my thinking. Is there anyone else who you want to mention here in terms of has had a good defensive year possibly?
Just a little bit more on Kemba. I think this year John actually has not been giving him as much minutes because John's been experimenting a lot more than usual with his lineups and such. Like, and also don't forget they had John Wall for a while, so they kind of split the minutes up a little bit more evenly. So he's not playing as many minutes as he usually does, I believe. And I think Kemba, he's always going to be up there because he plays arguably in my opinion, this DDS engine the hardest position to guard, which is point guard in my opinion. And
Yeah.
he does a great job. I mean, he usually averages around a ridiculous 98 or 99% stop rate. Like, who else can say that? Like, literally every year, this guy's up there.
Yeah.
So he's a constant fixture. But if there's another candidate we can talk about is I would say Kristaps Porzingis from Utah once again. Like I said, this guy just made huge leaps and bounds on both ends of the court, and he's averaging about like a steal and a half per game for a big man, which is pretty impressive. And he's averaging that above 2 block, thirds hold that we expect from good big man. So he's still really young too. So the crazy thing is he could actually improve even more. So
yeah, certainly. I mean, his jump has been incredible, and we'll certainly be talking about him later on today and going forward, I imagine in many different contexts. But yeah, he's proving he can do a couple of things on defense, which to me is really exciting for a big man.
yep.
One, you kind of spotted it. I mean, in terms of he forces turnovers, which is crazy for a big man. It's when you're defending guys whose handling ability is not particularly great, if you can steal the ball, that's really, really beneficial.
Sure.
In terms of the obvious things, he gets blocks, he makes the lane difficult and causes issues there, but he can also stop drives, which is surprising for a guy who is 7'3". I mean, his stop percentage. I mean, obviously he doesn't face many drives, being in the position he plays, but it's around 81%, which is surprising for a big man who's that big. And he's quite heavy as well, 235 pounds. So if he can keep that up, I mean, he could be you could even argue you could play him in a couple of positions from 3 to 5 if he can sustain that type of stop percentage.
For sure, for sure. That's what I think. That's why he's such a unique talent that he's slowly developing to the guy that can actually play 3 positions now. Imagine a 7'3" guy that can play small forward. I mean,
a 7'3" on the wing would just be crazy.
That is insane.
I mean, let me have a look. I mean, he's shooting about. I mean, again, he's not shooting many threes. I mean,
yeah.
When I say not many, he's taken 149 this year, but he hits about 32%, which means he is enough of a threat out there as well.
Correct.
Yeah. We could see Karl Anthony Towns and Kristaps Porzingis on the wing against each other. That would just be crazy.
And then you mess up Ben Simmons too. Oh Lord.
Oh dear God, I'm gonna have to change my entire game plan going forward. I think I can't have undersized wings anymore. So yeah, I mean they're the kind of guys who I had on my list. Was there anyone else you wanted to shout out to really in terms of this, or you kind of feel Okaro White? Then it could be anyone in terms of Kemba Walker, Kristaps, Jordan Adams. These type of guys. I tell you the one who surprised me, Jordan Adams. I'm just going to reiterate, he surprised me actually.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the stats. He actually looked really good, and I know Andre was talking about him, so figured give him some shout out because we all know Andre loves defense. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing to talk about just before we move on is just in terms of Kemba Walker, and you mentioned obviously the point guard is so essential in this version of DDS. One of the things I'm really excited about in terms of the new DDS is that you can select your ball handler, so you don't have to necessarily go through the point guard. Which for teams who have a certain strategy where they'll play guys who can steal the ball and be really aggressive on defense at point guard position, you can mix and match the defensive rotations now. So it'll add different flavor if when we, I'm sure we will at some point go into a new version of DDS. So that could be a game changer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, that's actually kind of realistic because you look at teams like the NBA, guys like Ben Simmons, LeBron. Those are all
Yeah,
point forwards
yeah,
that will bring the ball from the half court. So I think that'll be awesome because we can actually have those playmaking big men to actually be useful, like guys like Dario Saric and stuff like that can actually perhaps be utilized properly.
yeah, certainly. And it may bring some life into some players who, are wrong position players, wrong size players for the current version as well, that are sitting around in the league and probably not getting many minutes because they don't fill a particular role that is set in this current version of DDS. So yeah, we'll keep an eye out for that and see what developments have. But moving on to the next award, looking at the most improved player of the year. Who did you have down as sort of your number one for this award?
Most improved player. There's a few. Also, I'd like to give the Brooklyn Nets a shout out because it seems like every year they have somebody that's could be a most improved player. Pascal Siakam really impressed me this year. He seems to develop more endurance, so he's actually getting started minutes now, and he improved his rebounding total, efficiency, and scoring drastically. And he's even actually forcing some turnovers too. So I think he deserves a shout out. He's kind of like a Check Diallo kind of player.
Yeah, he's certainly developed into a guy who from a guy really who probably would have been a eighth or ninth man on the rotation. So you could probably throw him in for 20, 25 minutes on a decent team and get some solid defense and some rebounding. And if he needs to shoot, he can kind of shoot pretty well as well. So
Yep,
yeah, really good development by him and possibly one of the front runners for this award.
correct.
Was it?
Definitely. It seems like Adam just has done a really good job of just sticking with his guns and developing his guys. So I think that's why you can see that Brooklyn Nets guys always seems to be in these most improved awards.
Yeah, and I mean for a guy who was drafted in the lottery, it's kind of that second season where you expect to see some sort of value coming out of them in terms of development and actually putting some proper minutes on the clock really and seeing how they do. And Siakam is certainly making the most of it, and be interesting to see how that tandem with him and Miles Turner continues to develop going into next season.
For sure. Another guy we gotta look at is, of course, just to write about all the time, Austin Rivers. I agree. That guy, for some reason, we play against one of the matchups this year. He dropped 50 points on me. I was like, okay, all right, this guy gets my respect now. I still can't believe Indiana gave him away for free. But you look at Austin Rivers' stats this year. I mean, he finally get the minutes that he deserves, and he's balling out. Even though the Lakers are a bad team, but still, he's putting up really good numbers and it's most improved player award. So winning doesn't matter as much to me, in my opinion. It's just about stats, and he's showing that big improvement as a starting combo guard. So.
Yeah, it's all about finding diamonds in the rough for this type of award, certainly. And winning doesn't necessarily matter because you could have a guy who is sitting on the bench of a winning team and has never really had the opportunity, and then goes to a team and like Austin Rivers and puts up some really good numbers and actually starts to validate a role in this league. So yeah, Austin Rivers has certainly surprised me, and I think even surprised obviously Tim. Where he's come out and sort of said that he's going to retain his rights going into the off season because he really values him and wants to keep him.
Yeah, because originally I believe he was just kind of like a throw-in team. Was like, all right, well, I'll just take a free player, and turns out he's actually a baller.
Yeah, he's done really well. I mean, another guy that I've got down in terms of most improved player for kind of similar reasons really is Tim Quarterman. So
Yes.
here's a guy who again is in that second season syndrome where you kind of expect to get some value out of him from drafting him, and it's always difficult when you're looking at a franchise who hasn't had a GM and has had a couple of GMs bounce in and out, and he's never really been given the minutes or the time to actually show what he's capable of. But this year, I mean, in terms of his output, it's really, really good on a team that has two really good scorers in James Harden and Kevin Durant. He's still put up some really good numbers on a team that only just missed out on the playoffs.
Yep. I mean, like I think the one of the biggest difference this year when Miles was taking care of this team as the caretaker GM is to start giving Tim Quarterman more minutes instead of Terrence Ross, and I think that's what made the difference. Because I remember the Golden State was struggling for a while; they were like around maybe 500 at best. And after the All Star break, I think Miles decided to give Quarterman more, close to almost starter minutes off
Mm-hmm.
the bench, and he has been done a great job for them to relieve Kevin Durant and James Harden when they're either injured or they're tired. And I think Quarterman is only going to improve even more. I think he got that scoring boost from last off season, so this kid's going to be something special. I know Dennis loves this guy, so as a former draft head, he probably has some good insight, and I think Quarterman is going to be a good player.
Yeah, I think he's probably an ideal six man for the Golden State because he is very offensive focused. He shoots really well. I mean, he does need to tighten up his defense. Certainly, if he's going to be able to play sort of the 2 and 3 position, he can't play point guard. But those two
Yeah,
positions with the types of guys he's going to be guarding, especially in the Western Conference, if he really wants to push on and go from a six man of the year candidate to a starter and going into his contract year, he needs to certainly get some sort of boost on the defensive side to even just be average there. If he was just average there, a lot of teams would start looking at him, I think.
for sure, for sure. Like I said, right now he's a perfect six man, and but I think he's still young. He's still potential to improve in other areas too. So we'll probably see him eventually become average on defense under the right development. So.
Yeah, yeah. So is there anyone else who you want to give a shout out for most improved player?
Well, I gotta give a shout out to Demontis Sabonis. Phil decided to give him a chance when nobody else seems to ever give him a chance. And Sabonis, we know this guy can't defend. That's a fact. But he's actually improved a lot offensively. This guy was averaging around like 4 or 5 points per game at max, and now he's averaging 12 points per game on 49% shooting. I mean, he improved a lot efficiency wise and scoring wise. And I think that as long as keeps giving Phil give him playing time, he should develop into a pretty good scorer, kind of like a Nikola Jokic kind of player.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is where it kind of pays, I think, to occasionally have just a glance at the D League that we have. I mean, obviously, we send guys down just to get minutes and develop, and there is so much junk and rubbish in the D League in the CSL. But um, just to throw you out, I mean, he only played 11 games there last year, but he put up some crazy, like really crazy numbers. I mean, borderline like D League MVP numbers, really.
Yep.
On some crazy shooting, and I'm sure Phil, he always has a look at the D League. I know he always keeps an eye out for it because he looks for that bargain who can bring in on the bench and give him something. I'm sure he had a look at that with Sabonis, and it's great to see that's kind of paying off for him now.
Yeah, it gives the team, the team doesn't have too much to build around with, gives him some hope and, keeps him interested. And he's paying off because I think Sabonis going to. If I scouted him before, and he has a really, really nice outside game for a big man. I think that as long as he keeps working on his preferences, make him shoot outside, and his scoring, I believe he still has more room to grow as a scorer, too. So he might become a pretty good weapon, as a six man eventually.
Yes, if he can hide his terrible defense,
Yeah, this has no defense at all.
no,
So.
I mean, let me have a quick look at his defense. I mean, his stop percentage is 22%, which is absolutely atrocious. But I mean, his points allowed shot faced is 0.9, so I don't know how that kind of correlates. There must be something else in there that he's managing to do because he can't block, he can't steal. Either that or Phil is doing an amazing job of hiding him in the rotation somewhere.
Yeah.
So
He's
I
definitely
mean,
a one-trick pony. He's a one-trick pony, but
oh yeah, yeah,
he improved a lot, so I gotta give him a shout out.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so one guy that we were talking back and forth of before we kind of came on was Mr. Mario Hezonja from the Brooklyn Nets. I mean,
Yep.
you had a particular view that he absolutely needs to be considered for most improved player. So I'm going to give you the floor because I have a completely different view. You've got 30 seconds to try and convince me, Gary, that I'm wrong in this.
Sure. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Your 30 seconds are going very quickly here, and you've not
Yeah,
said anything.
I think I was losing connection. I think my mic was just not
Oh,
working
either
good.
that, or either that, it was stone silence that you
Yeah.
agree with me that Hezonja is not a most improved player.
I think the reason I give him a no because he's actually being as a leader now of the Brooklyn Nets. He's the alpha dog, and you look at his stats. He improved efficiency. He's getting rebounds. He's actually decent passing the ball, and he's actually forcing some turnovers too. I remember he's actually pretty decent as a shot blocker, which is surprising. I know Adam actually tried him as center and actually like killed Detroit as center. So I think Hasonia is a special talent. He has a really high draw fouls as well, so he gets to the line. So even though his shooting percentage may not be like the most aesthetically pleasing, but I think he also gets to the line and converts them really well. So I think it's just that he have a chance. He's showing that he's averaging 20 points, 5 and 4, and I think that's pretty good improvement. He was averaging around 14, 15 a game beforehand, so he's stepping into the next level, which is borderline all-star level. So that's why I think that he deserves some mention.
Yeah, you haven't convinced me, I think, but I can see where you're coming from in terms of he's hit that elusive 20 points per game. Granted, it's on a team where there is no other scoring options really outside of Miles Turner, so
Yeah.
um, he's hit that elusive 20-point mark, which generally means usually that he's doing something right. I mean, the reason I would argue that he's probably not most improved player is because if you look at some of his numbers, even when he was in Indiana in his second year, he in 27 minutes he was putting up 15 points, and now in 32 he's putting up 20. I mean, the jump's not huge,
Yeah.
which to me he's making improvements, which is great. And for a guy who's drafted seventh, I mean, you kind of expect it, but he's not made a big enough jump in comparison to some of the other guys we've talked about. And so he was certainly, when I looked at the stats and looked at the jumps, he was one that I had on my list, but I quickly ruled him off because the jump hasn't been that big. I mean, I guess to your point, I think if he makes that third year jump and he goes from 20 to 25, 26, and the shooting percentage goes up another 10, 15, percent, um, then he's in borderline for most improved next year, certainly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, by then he probably just become an all-star too. So.
Yeah, yeah, he would certainly be in an all-star considerations at that point, and
Yep.
and there's nothing to suggest that he can't do that going into next season at the moment.
Yep. Sky's the limit for that kid. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So another guy that I had down on my list, and it's this last guy that I've got to talk about really is again going back to the Pelicans, but looking at this man here. So Nikola Vucevic,
Yep.
a guy who, if you'd have asked anyone last season in the off season, would you like to take Nikola Vucevic? Would you like to pay him some serious money? Um, you know, not, I'd reckon 29 or 30 GMs would have gone, I'm not touching him, even if he's on a minimum salary contract, because his reputation was so tarnished at that point. I mean, the teams he jumped around at. I mean, even Miami, one of the teams we talked about at the beginning of this, a team that loves having players who can play multiple positions and are a little bit different, basically chucked him away and didn't play him. And Chris, the Pelicans GM, picked him up on a cheap contract at $3 million, and even then, there was teams saying, "Oh, I can't believe you've paid him that much." And you only have to look at him now, and look at how he's gone back to some of the form that he had early on in his career, and he's putting up nearly double numbers off of some really good shooting percentages.
Yeah, he definitely put up some good numbers. Especially, I remember when Anthony Davis was out for a while, he was keeping the team afloat. So
Yeah, I mean, you look at we know he can play okay defense because of his height, and he only plays one position, and you can't rotate him around at all. But the issue has always been on the offensive side that he's been very hit and miss, and certainly this year it's kind of all come together for him. And now you look at him and look at his contract, and I mean, certainly they're going to pick up his team option. I'll be massively surprised if they don't, but he now looks like he could be a solid starter for the Pelicans, which at the start of this season you'd been questioning.
yeah, for sure. The thing about him is that I think he's one of those unfortunate situation where he's in the wrong generation of basketball philosophy. He's
Yeah,
more of one of those old school big men that just like to go inside and volume scoring and grab some rebounds, but he's not going to wow you in defensively. But nowadays, everybody's all about guard play and strong rim protector and rebounders. He doesn't have those quality, and I think that he works well is because Anthony Davis can do everything else that he can't do. They just complement each other well because Davis will clean up everything on the defensive end, and Vucevic can just focus on cleaning the glass and scoring when needed.
yeah, and the Pelicans are certainly in terms of style an old I say old fashioned, but a traditional style of play, and Vucevic fits that perfectly. And for me, I think if the only downside with Vucevic, which is difficult to say for a guy who's been down and out for so long and has made this comeback, if he just on the defensive side could just get that extra 5-10% and block a couple more shots and cause a little bit more of a disruption, he would be a very good start for most of the league.
For sure, for sure. I mean, he's still average of 1.1 steals per game, which is pretty good for a big man. So I think that this year he just shows everyone that he can be a starter on the playoff team. I think that one of the main reasons he was shopping around so much is because of his contract, like you mentioned before.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
one of those guys that's kind of like Evan Turner, big nasty contract, not worth it. And you know how it goes when you have a crap contract at one time in your career. Now everybody just hates you, even though you can have like a lot
yeah,
cheaper contract. Now people still gonna be like, ugh, garbage contract, garbage player. That's how we see things here in the sim league, and
yeah,
which is
yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah.
But hey, kudos for Christopher for finding him, willing to ignore the previous reputation and give him a chance, and it's paying off.
Yeah, certainly is paying off for them. So I guess in terms of the most improved player of the year, I mean, I've got two that are kind of standing, or three that are standing out for me actually. So Siakam, Rivers, and Quarterman. Is there anyone else you think would crack that top three, or you feel that's kind of set?
That's kind of said how I see it, so it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, and I guess who do you see sort of as the front runner for this award? I mean, it's pretty close, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to give it to Siakam just because, like, those he pretty much jump in every category. There's rebounding, efficiency, scoring, defense, turnover forcing. I mean, he just improved everywhere, and you know, I think that that's the definition of the most improved player. He literally improved every area of his game.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with Siakam. I think. For, I mean, you could argue Rivers. I know Tim has certainly made the case for him, and you can see just by the jump in terms of giving him an opportunity what he's made of it. And Quarterman has made that traditional jump as well. But yeah, Siakam, just because, as you said, a couple of areas he's improved in, whereas some of the other guys, it may only be one area. So yeah, I think I'll agree with you, and we'll give him the nod for that one. So next award up is the Sixth Man of the Year award, and we may have touched on a couple of guys already, but um, anyone for you that you want to kick off with here?
You know, I think the couple of guys that been mentioned a lot would be like Jamal Murray from the Pistons. He's really transcended into a very, very good scorer, and he's doing a good job leading the second unit off the bench for them. Jamal Murray when he came out the draft, I remember he was more of a solid scorer, got some playmaking and decent defense, but he got that scoring boost, those random scoring boosts that we get
Hmm.
from those rookies and sophomores, and he really transcended his game into a really efficient scorer. And I think he
Yeah, I mean, for me, he reminds me a lot of Crawford, the old school six man of the year in the NBA in real life. He can score, he can do a bit of everything, and he is electric off the bench. So um,
sorry, I got interrupted here. Can you hear me?
yeah, no problem. I was just saying he reminds me a lot of Crawford from the NBA, the six man of the year that was um,
Yes.
multiple award winning for that. He can score and he's a bit electric off the bench, and he kind of makes an impact, but you never really want him as a starter.
Yeah, he's very similar to guys in real life like Lou Williams, Jamal Crawford, guys like that. Just can just come off the bench and give you that 15 to 20 points out of nowhere,
Yeah,
and also throwing some assists in there and some highlight plays. And I think he's definitely a well deserving candidate.
yeah, and certainly, I don't know about you, but for me, six man of the year, you have to be on a team that is winning or is nearer to the playoff hunt than down the bottom, because you want that guy to be an impact guy and who actually contributes to winning. And Jamal Murray certainly has done that this year for the Pistons. I mean, another guy I've got down is KCP from the Chicago Bulls.
Yep.
Probably the most overpaid six man in the league. But and I told Marcus that before. I think he obviously fills a particular role, and he very similar to Murray in terms of his output and percentages, but he can actually play defense, which is always
Yes.
fantastic. But his numbers are good, and he gives you a bit of everything.
Yeah, I mean he can shoot outside when needed. He's a little bit hot and cold at three, but when he's on, he's on, and he's very good at foul drawing, so he can get to a line. Plays defense, pretty good rebounder, versatile enough to play two or three. That's why he was the important piece for the Pistons dynasty. And Jamal Murray is just a cheaper replacement for him. But
Yeah, yeah,
Marcos obviously loves these kind of 3 and D guys at his wing. Just look at his old championship
yeah,
teams.
yeah.
That's how he's always built a team. And even though KCP may come off the bench, if you look at the way that he uses him, he's pretty much just a starter. He's pretty much just a guy that
Hmm.
helps out when guys like Holiday and Middleton gets in foul trouble or tired. So KCP, of course, he's going to be a 6 year man and candidate under Marcos every year, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we kind of got two guys that are very similar there in terms of output and performance. Is there a third guy on your list?
Yeah, another third guy. I was looking at it's Joshua Smith from the Miami Heat. I know. Everybody's gonna talk about his crazy strategy and the kind of stat boosting, but even if even then, his numbers are extremely impressive, stat boosting or not. I mean, he's efficient. He forces turnovers, cleans boards, scores at will. I mean, those are pretty legit numbers, especially for a big man. I mean, you can't argue with the numbers, and the team's also winning too. So it's not like they're just stat padding on a garbage team.
No, no, absolutely. And he he's an interesting one because obviously when he came into the league, everyone was going absolutely crazy over his weight and will it actually work? Will he just be too big and just people will just go around him and it'll be too easy? Yes, people are just going around him. Let's not beat around the bush here.
Yep.
People are literally just walking past him. His stop percentage is 0.24, which is I've never seen that in DDS for a guy who plays solid minutes. I've never seen that. But his points allowed shot face is 0.7, which is good. That's a good rating for a player on defense.
Yep.
Uh, but he's one of these weird anomalies that we've got in the league, and Miami is certainly making full use of it, and he rightfully so. He should be considered for sixth man of the year.
Yeah, I mean, another thing you look at is that they can hide him easily because he's playing at a center position. There's
Yeah,
not many
yeah,
drives he has to face, and then he has a unique ability to steal the ball. So even when you're trying to drive on him, you're at risk of losing the ball. So that's why I think he's such a unique player with such a low drive stop percentage, but then can somehow actually stop people is because he can steal the ball from all these big men. He's like, sure, go ahead and drive past me. I'll just put the ball
yeah,
loose for you.
yeah.
So
I just love this idea in my head that if I was watching the Miami Heat in the regular season, because of the pace they play at, like Joshua Smith running up and down the court just wouldn't happen. I like to think that the coach would just literally say to him, just stand in that key in that paint area on defense and don't go up on offense.
yeah,
And
that's why there's no realism in this engine. I mean, in real life, you not run a high pace in a zone. You don't run a high pace in a zone. It's just complete opposite of philosophy in real
yeah.
basketball. So
Or if he has to get up, he literally gets up to like the half court and then he just stands there. And they may occasionally throw him the ball just to because he's the only guy who's open and then he just throws it and he's not really interested. And then when the break happens, he just gets back and they make sure that they stop it. For me that's would be fascinating in terms of how on earth that would ever work in the real world. But certainly in
yeah, it's kind of
DDS it works.
yeah, it's kind of like Shaq, I guess.
Yeah, but even I don't even think Shaq would have that terrible stop percentage because yes, guys would just walk around him, but he was big enough that he would just sort of move his hips into them and kind of just put them off in terms of balance. So he would kind of
Yeah.
stop it that way. And Joshua Smith in DDS isn't even doing that. So it's a fascinating rookie, and I have to applaud the draft team for that in terms of they put someone in there who just made everyone think where on earth will he fit? I mean, I'm getting off topic here, but even into when he was being drafted, no one knew where he was going to go. Some guys were saying, "Oh, he's a top 4 selection." Other guys saying he's going in the second round. I mean, that sort of craziness makes it really interesting.
Yep, definitely a very polarizing prospect.
Yeah, I mean, and in terms of other six-man candidates, I mean, we talked about Tim Quarterman, so I don't really want to go back into that conversation. But again, it's similar numbers to KCP and Jamal Murray, but for Golden State, really. Was there anyone else who kind of stands out for you in six man, or you kind of quite comfortable with KCP, Jamal Murray, and Josh Smith as kind of the three that are being considered?
Yeah, those are definitely the top three, and then one of the honorable mention will always be James Young. He's always going to be one of the candidates because he's just such a good, efficient scorer. But unfortunately, he's playing on a rather non-playoff team. So, like you said, it kind of just lowers his stat value compared to the other candidates. I mean, he's still
Yeah,
putting up great numbers, but no, they're not winning games. So,
yeah. I have to agree with you on that. So, if you had to pick one of the three that we mentioned as your who did you pick actually out of those three for your six man of the year?
I think I actually gave it to Joshua Smith for my voting wise as first place because it's not often you'll find a 6 man big man putting up 6 man kind of numbers. Usually more of a wing and guard award if you're looking at the
Yeah,
past history.
yeah, that's true.
So
Yeah,
I
I have
know
to, I
stat
have to agree with you.
inflation. I know I understand that, but still, like something that
Yeah,
unique we've never seen before. I figure we would just throw an idea out, just something fresh, and instead of the old stale wings that's gonna win the 6 man a year award or point guards.
yeah,
So
I kind of have to agree with you. I quite like that, and it's quite a fresh interpretation of it. And yeah, we can talk about stat stuffing all day and all evening, but the stats are what they are, and his performance and he's with a winning team and the benefit he brings certainly puts him in sort of the front position, I think, for that award this year.
yep.
So I guess we're kind of down to the last player award, which is the probably the most contentious award this year. Is the Rookie of the Year award. I mean, I don't know about you, Gary, but I've got listed down here eight different players I could give this award to. I mean, how many did you consider when you thought about this?
I mean, I agree. There's pretty much just 7 to 8 guys that are very well deserving any year, but I think there's two guys that really jump out to a big league compared to everyone else.
Yeah, and I mean, well, I guess we'll talk about those two guys in detail, but I mean, uh, the other guys I'd considered, and we won't. I don't think we need to go into the details talking about them, but just shout outs really to the GMs for giving them playing time and for selecting them, and in some cases the guys we've got listed here that just giving them an opportunity really. So I mean, I've got Semi Olajayi, I think that's how you say it, from the Miami Heat.
Yep.
Obviously, plays multiple positions, puts up good stats, helping them win games. It's important. I've got Josh Jackson from Denver, who has had a good season. I mean, I'm sure he's going to make a massive jump next year with if hopefully John Wall stays in Denver, but
Yeah.
with alongside him. Brandon Ingram at Milwaukee. I mean, we knew Ingram was the clear number one pick last year, and his stats haven't necessarily been probably nearer to the two that we're going to talk about, but um, certainly you can see why he went number one. And unfortunately, he's had that injury that's knocked him out for a little while. But when he comes back, he should again make another jump, which is great. And there's one other guy that we've got listed here that I think it's rightful that I turn it over to you at this point because you kind of highlighted him to me, and you made a really good case for why he's not necessarily in that top two for rookie of the year, but certainly needs a shout out.
Correct. Mr. PJ Dozier. I mean, this guy, I understand that he's not the most efficient scorer, but he's been such a huge part of the team's success because he's so versatile. I've seen him put him at point guard, shooting guard, literally everywhere on the court, and he's putting up some good numbers. There's quite a few times I've seen the box score they flirt with almost triple doubles. So this tells you that what kind of impact this kid makes. And he's also a good defender. He's developing. He's going to develop into a really good defender. And I think that he's just a good all-around versatile piece. And not many people expected him to put up this kind of numbers this early on because he's come out as more of a raw prospect. But he has done a really good job in the Miami roulette of crazy versatile players. So.
Yeah, absolutely, and worthy of a shout out certainly. But looking at the front two, I mean, it's probably going to be no surprise of the two guys that we're going to talk about. Um, I guess first up, we'll go to Chicago and talk about Mr. Laurie Markkinen. I mean,
Yep.
he's put up some good numbers, hasn't he, Gary?
Oh, for sure. This guy just he actually even as the year went on, he played better and better too. So it wasn't he started off pretty good, but then he eventually got even better as Marcus started giving him more playing time and finding better ways to utilize his low post skills.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. I think when the season started, he was quite disappointed. I think with the fact that he wasn't taking enough shots.
Yeah,
He was being quite lethargic on the offensive end and letting guys like Chris Middleton and even Justin Holiday take up shots.
and
But
I remember in the beginning of the year people were focused more of Sinan Guler,
mhm.
but then Markin is starting to take over, so Guler just kind of become more of a secondary piece.
Yeah, and I think the exciting thing for Laurie Markkinen is that yes, he's taking more shots. He's still shooting really, really well for a rookie, considering he's not had many instructions. I mean, he's had a few, but there's still opportunity to get that even better. And also for a guy who is not known for defense, his defense has actually been fairly decent this year. I mean,
Yep,
he can't stop drives, so don't ever expect him to play out on the wing. But he's 1.5 turnovers forced, and his points allowed shot face is 0.8. I mean, he's probably helped by the fact DeAndre Jordan is in the paint with him, but that's still positive for a guy who many thought couldn't play defense.
exactly. And I feel like that he's for rookie. He's put usually I feel like rookie big man. You don't really talk about them because it's more such a guard eccentric league, guard slash wings, and that's why I think Markin is such a unique candidate because we're desperately in need of another potential big time 20 and 10 big man,
Yeah.
and this kid's already getting 17 and 8 as a rookie, and
Hmm.
future the sky's the limit for this kid. So I definitely think he deserves it because he plays in a position that lacks talent, and he's standing out as a rookie already. So
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I guess the difficulty you always have when you draft a big man is that it's difficult with big men to get value out of them straight away because they normally have flaws or they can't shoot or they can't defend. And it's always refreshing to see a guy come in and do something straight away and make an impact straight away. And Laurie Markkinen has certainly done that.
on a winning team, and one of the most improved team.
Absolutely. And then from one winning team to another winning team with a rookie, the Boston Celtics
Yep.
and De'Aaron Fox.
What a
Uh,
beast.
this guy, I mean, this guy could be one of the next best point guards, couldn't he?
Oh yeah, I mean this guy is already pretty much the leader of a really talented young Boston team that's leading the division and making a playoff run. And originally everybody in the draft was like, "Whoa, why did Darren Fox, got picked
Mhm.
so early?" A lot of people feel guys like Dennis Smith Jr. and stuff like that as ahead of him in the point guard rankings, even Denzel Livingston. But I think Dennis knows that Fox, what he's capable of. He's just showing he's doing a little bit of everything, and he's also efficient at it too for a guard. So it's tough. Him and Markkinen's clearly the top two right now.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, just touching on De'Aaron Fox. I mean, I guess the other thing to touch on is when the draft happened, everyone was Lonzo Ball was miles and miles and miles ahead of every point guard in here, and then it was a
Yep.
second tier that was mixed with about 5 or 6 guys, and we've seen Lonzo Ball play really well and do exactly what we expect, and that is good defense, can pass, doesn't necessarily take over games in terms of his scoring output, but De'Aaron Fox can kind of do it all, and I mean, a great selection by the Celtics, who were looking for that point guard who they could, lock down their future with. He's going to be so cheap for them over 4 years, and his output is going to be completely beyond that, and gives them such a great opportunity now going into the next couple of years to develop him and all the other guys they've got on the team and really make a push for a championship possibly. And yeah, it's tough, isn't it, to choose between the two? I mean, if I had to pick, and unfortunately, Marcus, I have to say it, but De'Aaron Fox would be my pick. I just think that it's difficult to get a point guard who can come in and be that impactful, and take a team, plus 50 wins. I know Markkinen has done very well, and I'm sure he's going to go leaps and bounds and again be a dominant big man. But for me, it comes down to, I think it's what it comes down to, Gary. If I had to pick between the two, who I'd want on my team, I'd want De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah. It really just depends on like how you want to build your team. Because we all mentioned before a couple of times already, this is a very guard wing centric league right now. And that's why it makes sense you want to pick Fox first because, you look at all the championship teams, usually they have a pretty good point guard. I think like Phoenix with Eric Bledsoe, Sacramento Westbrook, and Peyton, and who else? And Detroit with Kemba Walker, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
So Fox could be molded into one of those types of elite point guards. So I can definitely see why. But for this season alone, I'm giving a slight edge to Markkinen. It's not because I'm buying the Marcus's hype. I know that he's the greatest car salesman on earth. We all know that. But I mean, he's just putting up really good stats on a position that nobody expects to. Like, how often do you hear a rookie big man coming in a power forward? Usually, maybe center. Even then, like Porzingis and Cat didn't look that impressive in the
hmm
first year. But Markkinen is putting in work. He's coming out putting double doubles, being efficient. Decent on defense already, and he's playing on a team that's a winner. So
yeah, yeah,
it's really close, honestly. You can pick Fox or Markin. There's no wrong answer here. I guess I'm just picking Markin because you're picking Fox. So it's kind of like
yeah.
a devil's advocate here. So
I think it's 50-50 in terms of who will get this award. I think it just comes down to preference, really. I mean, you
yeah,
could either guy could win it, and you'd go, yeah, I'm happy with that. I think that's a fair selection. It's a really close Rookie of the Year award this year, which is is great for the league, and in comparison to last year, where I think it was just a one horse race really.
Yeah, I'm definitely need some infusion of young talent because guys like Kemba, John Wall, Anthony Davis, they're all starting to hit their later end of their prime, and we need a new batch of talent to go along with guys like Exum, Marcus Smart, stuff like that. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess in terms of looking at talent from players to coaches now, we'll dive into the Coach of the Year award. And I mean, I've got a couple of guys listed. You've probably got a couple of guys listed. Should we just start with some shout outs first in terms of guys who you think probably won't make the top three, but deserve a bit of recognition for the way they've coached their team this year?
yeah, for sure. The first guy I'll probably give a shout out to is I'm gonna have to give you a shout out because your team originally was really struggling. Like in the beginning, before the All Star break, we're like, man, there's no way they can make the playoffs in such a tough West. And bam, out of nowhere, after All Star break, you guys went on like a crazy rampage. You guys won like 29 games out of the past 32 or something like that, crazy like that. And now you're in the playoffs, and you just swept the Phoenix Suns. I mean, I know playoffs not supposed to really count these regular season awards, but that speaks volume of like a big turnaround the Portland Trailblazers have been playing.
Yeah,
That's really impressive. Like,
thanks for the shout out. So I guess one team that I want to shout out to, probably don't quite make the cut for me this year, but a team that surprised me really, and surprised me not just with moves, and we'll talk about the GM of the Year award, but in terms of just getting the balance right and getting a team clicking, and that is the Utah Jazz, a team that last year I think struggled with its identity and struggled with how it's going to play, and obviously with Kevin getting DDS has certainly helped and worked wonders, and they've gone from a team that again was an eighth seed I think last year, or low seed,
they're lower seeded, yeah.
yeah, to a team that's 50 wins, and young and going on the right trajectory, and he's got the best out of guys like Porzingis, who people were starting to sort of push away and say that he was never going to live up to his hype, which is great. It's great to see him develop guys like that. I'm looking at some of the players he's got. I mean, like if I had to pick, I think Giannis has been fairly decent for him as well.
Yep.
Putting up, some better shooting numbers. But for me, didn't quite make the cut. Is there anyone else you kind of want to give a shout out to? You didn't make your top three?
I mean, technically Miles is not really the GM of those teams, but I think he did a pretty good job terror kicking the Raptors and the Warriors. Both those teams didn't have a GM, and one of them close to making the playoffs, the other one actually in the playoffs. So he deserves some credit managing three teams at the same time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we're kind of moving into what our top three is for Coach of the Year this year. I mean, the first one I have down is I mean, for me, I don't know about you. I've got a clear winner, but I'm gonna hold him off until a bit later on, and give a shout out probably in terms of the guy who's made my top three. It's the Boston Celtics and Dennis.
Yep.
The team is deep and there's a lot of talent there, but it's difficult when you have a lot of talent to make it all fit in terms of minutes and getting the right balance in terms of personnel. And I think he's done a great job in terms of taking that team forward. And I think he's had a couple of major injuries this year throughout that as well. So he's had to manage the lineups quite actively. And, it's worked wonders. And the Celtics are in a great position going into the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. It's always hard to manage such a young roster too. I know I went through a rebuilding phase myself, and even though there's lots of young talent and look good on paper, but it's very difficult to get them gelled together and play as a cohesive winning unit. And he has done that. And we all know Dennis always gets to max out his players. That's why he always gets good trades as well from guys that you wouldn't expect it. And he's doing it again with all these young guys this year, maximizing their potential, maximizing the ability, and they're all working as a unit, and they won a division. So yeah, he definitely deserves a shout out at the top three.
Yeah, and I mean, he's getting some good value out of not just the young guys, but I've got John Henson up here. Out
Yep,
of a guy, I mean, a guy he picked up in free agency. On a I think it's mid salary, mid level exception. But again, a guy who feels the need and comes in and can play straight away, and he manages to utilize them really well, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. Certainly,
for
I mean,
sure.
guys like Napier is a guy who I completely trashed him on and said, "Oh, he's there purely he's purely there just for him to be traded at the deadline," and he said no, he's there to fill a role, and I actually have a place for him on the roster. I know exactly what he's going to do, and he has. And Napier has performed fairly well for him, and all these guys are meshing together and getting wins for him, and it's worked really well for them.
Exactly, and that's good GM and good coaching right there. So.
Absolutely. So, who have you? I guess I've listed a guy, a GM who's done well. I think I'm safe in saying we've got uh, the same number one. So I'm interested to hear who's your other guys hovering around the 2-3.
One guy we got to talk about is Kyrus for the Houston Rockets. He's the king of innovating crazy lineups and crazy strategies. We all know that. But he made nobody honestly in the beginning of the year nobody expected this team to be a 50-win team. At max maybe a 42-40 kind of team because such a young raw roster that's pretty much built around Karl Anthony Towns and a really raw Malik Monk. Sorry, but they went on a road just kind of like you guys did in the second half of the season. Not as hot as you guys, but they were one of the hotter teams in the league as well. And he's done a good job maximizing his young roster. He played around. He's always adjusting his roster's lineup and strategy because I talk to him a lot. So he always puts in good research to maximize his guys, and the record shows it. Like I said, I can tell you, I guarantee me in a year, I forgot, maybe somebody did a Western Conference review. The Rockets maybe at best was like an 8th or 9th seed, and boom, they almost won the division. And that tells you that he's done a really good job coaching up this team, and they're still very young too. So
Yeah, no, I have to agree, and he was down on my list as well as the second person. But uh, I've got here Kyrus / Gary version 2 because I see it as kind of he's taken some of your philosophy from your old NLL days in terms of playing guys in crazy positions, and
yep,
a great example of that is Dragon Bender, who got probably written off by the Miami, which is surprising considering they do play full positionless basketball, really. But he got written off there. He came to Houston in a trade. I think he got hardly anything, moved hardly anything to get him. And I've seen Bender play 1-5 for the Houston Rockets this year based on matchups, and that's coaching at its best because he's managed to get a guy who probably isn't suited to playing, his natural position of center or power forward, and it's moved him to sort of the 1-3 position. And boy, has it worked wonders for them. And he's just one example of many on this team who have been playing different positions, been crazy lineups, and it's been working for them.
yeah, that's why like I said, like he a lot of strategy, like even my old style is kind of similar. Reflect on his team. Like there's quite a few guys in the roster are former Wizards, so that's probably kind of tells you why we like to discuss strategy so much. So
So you're loosely taking credit for the Houston Rockets this year. Is that what you're saying?
nah, he's done a good job maximizing the guys. Gotta give it to him. So
Yeah, certainly has
his
done a
team
great job.
more than I did, and I was expecting him to be playing better. So there you go. I
Yeah,
suck. He's better. So.
you went back to playing traditional basketball. Perhaps you need to go back to playing some of these crazy lineups, and you'll win
I
55
guess so.
games.
Apparently, that's what my niche is. So
So I guess the clear number one, I think, in this Coach of the Year position is the New Orleans Pelicans. I mean,
oh yeah.
am I safe in saying that that's who you had as well?
Oh yeah, I mean this guy, Christopher, brand new guy, like literally has not even touched his game before. I'm not mistaken. Miles kind of took him under the wings, teach him the ways and stuff, and you can see him even in discussion board and chatting, he's always trying to learn about the engine, learn about the game, and it's paying off. This is rookie season. This is the team that pretty much just literally Anthony Davis and nothing, and he coached him up into a eighth seed. Like nobody expected this Pelicans team to actually make the playoffs in such a tough West, and somehow he overcome all the odds. Even with Anthony Davis was out for like 20 games too this year, which is crazy, and he still took them to the playoffs. And you gotta give him props. Like this is really impressive work for a rookie GM that literally has never played this game before.
Yeah, and I have to agree in it. I think it's worth reiterating that they yes, they got to an 8th, which is fantastic. And I've talked before about some of the moves they made to try and get there, and it's fantastic to see a GM come in and actually try and get into the playoffs, which is surprising, I know, but there are GMs who actually do try and do that. But I think not necessarily just in terms of making the FC, but the record they had was 44-38, which is a clear winning record. And it's not like he got there with a losing record and it just stumbled in. It was the last game of the season position they got into to get in there, and they beat a Golden State team, yes, that doesn't have a GM, but has two guys in there who are arguably near Anthony Davis level. So to beat a team like that, to get into the playoffs, and to coach a team and take on players like Brandon Knight, Vucevic, Roy Devon Marble, guys who, people have looked at and not really been interested in. And to get that all to mesh together with Anthony Davis and get that winning record and go into the playoffs is a fantastic achievement, and something that for me makes him a clear coach of the year.
Yep, he pretty much took a team of rejects and make them all fit into a nice puzzle, and it worked out to complement Anthony Davis. And Anthony Davis was out for a while along with Chandler Parsons too, which is probably arguably the two best players on the team. And that speaks volume of what kind of work he has done. He never gave up. He stuck with it. Just continued to try different things, learn things on the fly, and it paid off.
Yeah, absolutely, and massive applause for the work that he's put in for this team this year. So let's move on to the final award, from Coach of the Year to GM of the Year. Again, I mean, I've got probably about 5 names on here that I could talk about. I mean, I think I've got a clear 3 again. I mean, have you got anyone you want to shout out to? Who's probably not in your top 3, but deserves a bit of recognition?
I'm trying to think right now.
I mean, for me, we could talk about the Pelicans in terms of the moves they've made, in terms of to get into the playoffs, which has been great. But for me, I feel the actual success has been on the coach side, not necessarily on the GM, on the trading side.
So didn't really make any blockbuster moves, so to speak. It's just more of complementary pieces that worked out with Anthony Davis. To me, a GM of the year, you got to make like bold moves and drastic moves. And I think we can all agree that guys like Andrew from OKC definitely made huge noises this offseason. And it obviously paid off as they won a division. They're arguably one of the contenders for the Western Conference. I mean, he got Klay Thompson, Eric Bledsoe, Michael Gilchrist all in one off season. That's impressive.
Yeah, and he certainly took the initiative and made some big decisions and some big trades and some risky moves to go from a position where you're borderline playoffs to knocking on the door of Phoenix, Dallas, and Sacramento, and we'll see how it pays off in the playoffs. But 52 wins, looks solid, could rest players, easily won the division. So far, it looks good for him, and he has done a great job in terms of those trades.
Yep, I mean, he has been getting a lot of flack from all around the league a long time now, and I mean, he's finally proving his worth this year, and I think you got to give him some credit for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess in terms of a couple of guys who I want to shout out to as well, who haven't made my top list, but 2 guys we've talked about quite a bit actually today, but have not necessarily made the GM of the Year, but probably deserve an honorable mention. So Silo at the Miami Heat, in terms of his draft selections.
Yep.
Some questionable draft selections by most of the league, but they've panned out really well for him, and he's done a great job to get them into probably nearly one of the top Eastern teams now. And likewise, the Boston Celtics and Dennis in terms of drafting, free agency. We talked about John Henson and Napier as well, but turning that team around from a young team that needed to show some development to a team that is developing now and going in the right direction. But they haven't quite made the cut because, for me, they've made some good draft moves, some good free agency moves. But as you kind of mentioned, they haven't really had that blockbuster move that, that risky, gutsy move that's really propelled them on. They were kind of already on that trajectory anyway.
Yeah. Speaking of Miami, I think a lot of people overlooked that trade deadline deal that they made. Whenever they sneak into that Draymond Green deal, and they gave up Samji Oyajeli for like a pick and Dennis Smith. I think I got 2 picks, I believe. Got two
Yeah,
first
yeah,
rounders and Dennis Smith Jr. all for Sammy, who's a solid all around player, like you said, like contender for rookie of the year, but he's not a franchise changing player.
no,
So that's really good value, and then they obviously made the huge offseason signing coup and getting Damian Lillard. So those are
yeah,
some drastic bold moves that cover up some of the questionable draft decisions they made.
yeah, yeah. So I guess that kind of leaves us with two guys, I think, who are up there with Andrew in terms of this award. And I think you could go to either of the three. And I guess the first one to talk about is probably Kyrus and the Houston Rockets.
Yep. The king of trading.
The king of trading, yeah. And boy, has he made a load of trades this year. But I mean, obviously getting Karl Anthony Towns was a big move. Obviously getting younger, probably many people would have thought would have put them on a trajectory to, almost tanking this season, not really kind of being in the playoff hunt. Obviously that has gone completely the other way, and they are, up there in the playoffs, one of the top seeds. I mean, do you want to talk about some of their other moves that they may have made?
Yeah, I mean, I remember they were trading away. First of all, they traded for didn't they hit Dante Exum beginning of the year?
They did, yeah. That was the Karl Anthony Towns move, I believe.
Yeah, that was like the trade of the year right there, the biggest blockbuster of the year, and he's in it, and his team got better from it. So obviously, he deserves some recognition for making such a bold move.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the draft went pretty well for them. They got Patton and Monk, two guys we spoke about. They managed to pick up Bender pretty cheap because his stock was down, and have turned him into a fairly decent player.
Yeah, and they also traded for Alfaro Aminu back for really cheap too from San Antonio.
Yeah.
That's he's been a huge difference maker for them too.
He has, yeah. He's sort of filled that gap that they need, that sort of glue man position. And yeah, this roster has kind of more or less transformed, hasn't it, over the season, and it's working really well for them so far.
Yep, and just making little moves like trading for Nicholas Batum for pretty cheap, and signing Jakar Sampson, who was one of the Memphis's defensive darlings a couple of years ago, and he's coming in. He's been a pretty good defensive stopper coming off the bench. So
yeah, it's all working out pretty well for them so far, and certainly he deserves to be in the consideration for GM of the year, I think.
Agreed.
So who have you got down for your final sort of place, really, in terms of the three that could arguably each win this award this year?
Yeah, Andrew from Oklahoma, OKC, from barely French 8th, 9th seed kind of team to a top dog contender 1 year. That's impressive. Marcos literally turned the whole Bulls around from an absolute doormat into a legitimate playoff team in just one off season alone.
Yeah,
Bright future.
yeah, it's crazy. The roster transition's been pretty crazy with the Bulls, but you can't expect nothing less from Marcus, really, in
The
terms
king
of
of salesmen right there, I'm
yeah,
telling
yeah.
you.
And it was all in the off season as well. I think he only made like a couple of possibly one or two trades in the season. But
Yep.
you know, getting KCP, Hiller from the draft, Holiday, Middleton, Markkinen from draft, DeAndre
CJ
Jordan.
McCollum. Yeah.
I mean, that team has transformed from, as you said, from a team that was probably a bottom three team in the league to a team that's just one win shy of 50 wins this year. To a rookie who's a top rookie. Uh, you know, a good point guard and lots of players who fit Marcus's style.
Yep. Just typical Marcus team right here.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much more you can really say apart from I guess we're if we're comparing Andrew to Marcus. I mean, Andrew's was more drastic because we've never not really seen that from him before. I guess we're kind of looking at Marcus and his moves and thinking that's just standard Marcus, but even so, the change in direction is still so dramatic.
For sure. But Andrew has always been known as a guy just kind of like sitting at the borderline of barely making the playoffs or just mediocrity. And he completely transformed into the next level. And I think off just one off season and getting drastic pieces from the Suns championship dynasty team is very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's one more guy I want to talk about. He's actually not on a winning team,
Mhm.
but you got to give the Black Ice some credit for sticking around and actually putting up a legitimate roster after getting completely screwed over by the DDS free agency system. I've
Yeah,
never seen
yeah,
somebody get fleeced so badly in a free agency system like he did. Like literally, he offered max for Nerlens Noel and Damian Lillard, pretty much the best situation there is, and someone that both bail for somehow cheaper amounts, which is insane.
yeah,
I've never seen that happen before in my entire sim career. And hey, he never quit. He stuck around, reworked, retooled what he got, and actually put up some pretty decent roster for the future.
yeah. I have to agree. He's definitely deserves a shout out because that team was completely gutted at the off season for no logical reason really. And yeah, I mean, it was always going to be tough to do anything this season, but they started pretty well. I think they were in the playoffs for the first 20 or so games, and then
Yeah,
it kind of fell off. But
but I mean, he made the best of the situation. Like literally, I
yeah,
don't think
yeah.
they were in no business of winning that many games they have this year with that garbage roster with all the gutting. And just turn it around and got some good pieces and actually make it look respectable on paper.
Yeah, I completely agree. Definitely deserves a shout out for what he's had to endure this season. I'm sure many GMs, if they'd have had that situation, would have probably just walked away in complete frustration. So,
Oh yeah, I would have rage quit a long time ago. That happened.
Gary, it's been great to have you on. It's been great to talk about the different awards, and we'll see how accurate we are come the end of the playoffs, and whether we've got any of these awards right or whether we've just been completely wrong. We've been talking for the past hour and a half about the completely wrong thing, but it's been great to have you on. Best of luck with the off season, and I'm sure you'll be back on a future episode.
Yeah, man. Just thanks for having me on once again. Glad to see you coming back, and good luck with your team. Great job sweeping the Phoenix Juggernaut. So keep it up, man. Rooting for you.
Cheers. Thank you.